control the amount of sunlight admitted, thereby providing the colony with a varied and year-round supply of food.
A book by James P. Hogan. It's a series. Two Faces of Tomorrow is one of the titles. Endgame Enigma. Very forward-thinking authors. Voyage from Yesteryear. Cool designs too. Now, John Farley's Gaia trilogy. I haven't read these books again. And I don't see in the illustrations where there's the rotating space colonies, but it is mentioned several times in lists that I've read that they used rotating space habitats. Apparently with some aliens or something, like floating whale fishes. I did read a little bit about it. Down Below Station. 1981 by C.J. Shure. Greatly appreciate C.J. Shure for her contribution to space colony artwork. This book has a lot of fans online. Apparently it was really good. Now this video behind me, of course, it's from a movie in the early 2010s. But the book is called Ender's Game, and it was in the mid-80s, and it's one of the best books about science. It's one of the best science fiction books in the science fiction book list. If you read through the rankings, Ender's Game, it's just fantastic.
All new arrivals follow the yellow lights to your accommodation. The yellow lights.
I don't want to spoil like the plot, but it's a great book. If you like war stories and in space and science fiction. Saturnalia, I don't know the details here. Another one of those 80s books I haven't read. But again, I just want to include everything that I found in the progression, everything that's been published. I'm sure there's other people who are thinking and maybe doing artwork on their own time, but what's published? This is Consider Phlebas. It's part of the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. He also produced nonfiction, I guess, under Ian Banks, or different genres, but under the science fiction, hard science fiction, he produced his books were under the pen name Ian M. Banks. So in the Culture series, which is, I want to say 8 or 10 books, started with this book, and it's fantastic. Just the imagination that he used. His rotating space habitats are gigantic. So this is a later illustration by a YouTube artist. And so Vonda McIntyre, another female author writing about science fiction, and included rotating space habitats. Greatly appreciative to Vonda McIntyre. Thank you. A couple books here. And then Al Globus, he's awesome. Okay, so in the early 90s, I think he was working closely with NASA. I don't know if he was on the NASA payroll, but he created this design in the computer in the early 90s, Lewis 1 space habitat. And I think this is the beginning of 3D modeling with space habitats. Well, rotating gravity space habitats. But yeah, he was able to put textures on it. There's different decks. You can see in the cylinder. Al Globus is still around. He's still vocal and publishes things. I get his email here and there. Okay, Babylon 5 TV series in the 90s. One of the main settings in that series is on this rotating colony ship. Well, the Babylon 5 is the name of the ship, I think. Police Knots. I think that's like a game. Yeah, I think that was a game. That's just another example of an O'Neill cylinder.
L5, a point on the moon's orbit around the Earth, was chosen.
This one's more like a Stanford Torus. L5.
Then a master plan was drawn up. A grand design for the first city in space.
Now this is only a few years after Al Globus and Lewis 1, but look at the detail
of course, people were used to Earth's
with the 3D
gravity.
modeling.
To
Look how
provide
complex
something
this
similar,
is.
the living area on L5 would be built in a mile-wide ring, which rotates once every minute. The centrifugal force from the spin would produce artificial gravity. The whole city would be connected by a continuous main street running around the outside rim.
I think rendering this animation would bring a lot of modern computers
The
to
farms
their
and
knees.
animals would be housed in different layers around the inner ring.
They're doing this
Life would depend upon a continuously
25
recycled
years
supply
ago
of air
on
and
what the
water.
computers that they had back then. Even if it was like a NASA supercomputer,
The
probably
spinning
wasn't
outer
nearly
ring
as strong
would be
as
connected by
modern
4 giant
computers.
spokes to a stationary zero-gravity hub in the center. This was the entrance to our port, where spacecraft dock. The entire perimeter of the structure would be encased in 10 million tons of moon rock to protect us from cosmic radiation. A giant mirror would float nearby to bathe the city in reflected light.
What a fantastic animation.
At last,
These guys.
after nearly 30 years, our city was complete. With each transport from Earth, new citizens arrived.
Watch this trick. I got a magic cup.
We
It's actually just a
captured an
green
asteroid
cup, and I got a
to
green
mine
screen,
its metals
chroma
and
key.
fuels for our growing fleet of ships. Our dream of settling the outer planets was soon to be realized. Inside the city's protective skin, the population flourished and grew. By the time I was 7, there were 10,000 of us here.
Cowboy Bebop. I think that's a game. Or a book. I'm not really sure. I haven't really gotten into it. A lot of these stories and different types of media, they'll use the orbital space colony, but it's a really basic design, or not a very practical one, or like a small part of the story. So I don't really get that crazy into the story just because they use a space colony that I like. So Rama version 1, Eric Bruneton actually visualized the rendezvous from Rama space station. And this isn't an animation, it's just, static images. But look how much detail there is. And look how they got it to go around the curve. Like, do you know how to do that? I'd have trouble with that. Around the year 2000, there was a website created called Orion's Arm, and there was many contributors. I think like hundreds, maybe thousands. And there was a lot of talk and discussion about rotating space colonies and habitats. And I think, yeah, so there was a space simulator called Celestia, and that was an illustration from it, taken from it. This Startopia is an early 2000s video game. I had never heard of it until recently. I wish I had heard about this back then. I would have thought it was cool.